Life as a man is incredibly tough, both a blessing and a burden. The reality is, men are born without inherent value. Society does not care about you unless you make yourself valuable. Your worth is determined by your usefulness, by what you can offer. The beauty of this is that you have the power to shape yourself into something extraordinary, to become a force to be reckoned with. But that only happens if you're willing to put in the relentless effort, to push forward no matter what. If you sit around waiting for someone to hand you success, you will be ignored, forgotten, and disrespected. Many people fail to realize just how brutal and competitive life is for men. We are constantly measuring ourselves against each other, always in competition. And as a man, it is your responsibility to rise above, to strive for greatness, to be strong, disciplined, and principled. You must commit to the hard work required to achieve that. The real danger lies in men who let their emotions dictate their actions. Men who are overly emotional become reckless, unstable, and even dangerous. The irony is that the same people who condemn traditional masculinity fail to see that true masculinity is about control, discipline, and responsibility. A real man does what needs to be done, not because he feels like it, but because it is his duty. He runs into the fire because he must, not because it's easy. But today's society is teaching young men that they have no duty, that they should act purely on their emotions with no sense of responsibility. And when men lose control over themselves, chaos follows. Look at the world today. When men act purely on impulse, we see destruction, violence, and instability. A man who cannot control his emotions is a danger to everyone around him. The solution isn't to encourage men to break down and give into their emotions at every turn. A man who is calm, composed, and in control of himself is not a threat. He is a protector, a provider, a leader. He takes the time to think, to act with purpose. But a man who reacts impulsively, who does whatever he feels without restraint, becomes destructive. The constant push to make men more emotional, more reactive, more unrestrained is exactly why we see so much disorder in the world today. A strong man is not one who suppresses his emotions, but one who masters them, who uses them as fuel rather than being ruled by them. Look around you, look at your life, look at the world. Weak men, broken men, controlled men. And do you know why? Because they don't control their emotions. Their emotions control them. You wake up angry, you lash out. You feel sad, you hide. You get hurt, you quit. You're just a puppet, a slave to every little feeling that bubbles inside you. And that, my friend, is why you will never be truly powerful until you fix this. The most dangerous men in history, the ones who built empires, conquered cities, and led armies, were not the men who cried over every little setback. They were the ones who mastered themselves, because a man who cannot control his own mind will never control his life. So today I'm going to tell you exactly how to stop being weak, how to stop reacting like a child, and how to start controlling your emotions like a king. Because if you don't, the world will control them for you. Look at the most powerful men in history. The ones who built empires, the ones who dominated industries, the ones who conquered entire civilizations. Do you think they let emotions guide their decisions? Do you think they cried in the corner when things got hard? Absolutely not. They operated with cold, calculated logic. They removed emotion from the equation and focused on one thing only: winning. Because the moment you let your emotions take the wheel, you become vulnerable, and vulnerability is exploitable. The second you react instead of strategizing, the second you hesitate because you feel bad, the second you let anger, sadness, or fear dictate your actions, you lose. And now, let me ask you this. How many times have you made a bad decision because you were emotional? How many times have you said something in anger that you regretted later? How many times have you allowed a bad mood to ruin an entire day, an entire opportunity, an entire phase of your life? And where has that gotten you? You've been letting your feelings run the show like an undisciplined child throwing tantrums, and then you wonder why your life isn't where you want it to be. It's because you lack control. A man who is ruled by his emotions is a man who is ruled by the world. You cannot call yourself strong if you cannot even master yourself. Strength isn't about lifting weights. It isn't about looking tough in the mirror. Strength is the ability to stand in the middle of a storm and not flinch. Strength is watching everything crumble around you and still making the right decisions. Strength is being insulted, being doubted, being attacked, and not reacting because you have full control over yourself while the rest of the world flails around like a bunch of children. Discipline is knowing what needs to be done and doing it regardless of how you feel. That's the difference between winners and losers. Winners understand that emotions are just noise, useless distractions that try to pull them away from their goals. Losers, on the other hand, let those emotions dictate their lives. They wake up and decide how productive they'll be based on their mood. They let fear stop them from taking action. They let frustration make them quit. And then they look at their empty bank account, their unfulfilled dreams, their wasted potential, and they wonder what went wrong. What went wrong is simple. You let your feelings get in the way of your progress. You want to win? You want to dominate? You want to be the kind of man who walks into a room and commands respect without saying a word? Then control yourself. Stop reacting like a puppet whose strings are being pulled by every little inconvenience. Stop whining about things you cannot change. Stop letting temporary emotions make permanent decisions. You are either a man in control or you are a man being controlled. There is no in between. You don't have time to be weak. You don't have time to sit around and process your emotions. You have one life. Every second wasted drowning in feelings is a second stolen from your potential. Every minute spent wallowing in self-pity is a minute you'll never get back. And while you're sitting there overthinking, doubting yourself, letting emotions paralyze you, there is another man out there, stronger, sharper, more disciplined, who is taking the opportunities you were too weak to seize. So what do? You wake up, you harden your mind, you train yourself to be unshakable. When life throws a punch, you don't break down, you don't hesitate, you don't let emotions cripple you. You recalibrate, you adapt, and you strike back twice as hard. Because that's what it means to be in control. That's what it means to be unstoppable. And that's exactly what you need to become. I remember the first time I truly understood this. It wasn't in some grand moment of clarity, and it didn't come easy. It came through suffering. I was younger, broke, and struggling. Every day was a fight just to keep my head above water. The world was closing in on me. One day, everything that could go wrong did. A business deal collapsed at the last second. My car broke down in the middle of the road. My bank account was a joke, a few measly dollars staring back at me as if mocking my ambition. The pressure was unbearable. My mind screamed at me to break down, to punch a wall, to yell at the sky, to cry about how unfair life was. And for a split second, I nearly did. I nearly gave in to that pathetic, weak version of myself. But then I stopped. I asked myself a simple question. What will crying do? What will getting angry fix? What will complaining change? And the answer hit me like a train. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I could have sat there stewing in my emotions, letting the weight of my problems crush me, but what would that have done? Would my car have magically fixed itself? Would my bank account suddenly fill up? Would my business deal have come back from the dead? Of course not. If anything, it would have made things worse. Weakness feeds on weakness. The moment you allow emotions to take control, they start making decisions for you. And let me tell you, emotional decisions are almost always the wrong ones. So I made a different choice. Instead of letting my emotions dictate my actions, I buried them. I locked them away and focused on what actually mattered, solutions. I found a way to get the car moving again. I sat down and figured out how to pivot my business. I stopped worrying about what I didn't have and started making moves with what I did. And do you know what happened? My life changed, not because I got lucky, not because the universe suddenly decided to favor me, but because I refused to let my emotions turn me into a loser. This is the reality of life. If you give in to emotions, they will ruin you. Every time you let frustration, anger, or sadness take over, you are giving up control. And once you lose control, you become a puppet. You become a man who reacts instead of a man who decides. And the world is full of men like that. Men who explode in anger when things don't go their way. Men who waste hours feeling sorry for themselves instead of taking action. Men who sit around complaining about their problems instead of fixing them. They don't realize that every second they spend in emotional turmoil is a second wasted. And wasted seconds turn into wasted years. I see it all the time. A guy gets fired from his job, and instead of immediately figuring out his next move, he spends weeks sulking. A man gets rejected by a woman, and instead of improving himself, he drowns in self-pity. A young entrepreneur faces a setback, and instead of pushing through, he quits. Why? Because they let their emotions control them. They act like their feelings are some kind of divine force that must be obeyed. But here's the truth. Your feelings mean nothing if they don't serve you. You can feel sad. You can feel angry. You can feel frustrated, but none of that matters unless you use those emotions as fuel. You have two choices in life. You can be the man who collapses every time he faces hardship, or you can be the man who takes those emotions and turns them into power. The world doesn't reward men who break down. It rewards men who take control. The man who can wake up every morning, no matter how bad yesterday was, and keep moving forward, that's the man who wins. The man who can take every punch life throws at him and keep swinging back, that's the man who becomes unstoppable. The man who refuses to let emotions turn him into a slave, that's the man who rules the world. And here's the best part. This is something you can train. You don't have to be born with this ability. Every time life tests you, every time a challenge comes your way, you have an opportunity to choose. You can choose to be weak, to react, to let emotions cloud your judgment, or you can choose to be strong, to take a deep breath, to focus on solutions, and to keep moving forward no matter what. The more you do this, the more natural it becomes, and before you know it, you'll be one of the rare few who truly understand what it means to be in control. So next time you feel that wave of emotion rising inside you, stop. Ask yourself, will this emotion help me or hurt me? If the answer is hurt, then bury it, lock it away, replace it with action, because the man who controls his emotions controls his destiny. And the man who controls his destiny, he controls everything. Fear, doubt, regret. These emotions are designed to break you. They exist to keep you weak, to make you hesitate, to stop you from becoming something greater. And most men let them win. Most men wake up every morning already defeated because their mind is under attack and they don't even realize it. Their fear keeps them from making that bold move. Their doubt convinces them they're not good enough. Their regret chains them to the past, making them relive their failures over and over again instead of moving forward. And that's exactly why they stay stuck. That's exactly why they never rise above their circumstances. But here's the truth. Your emotions are not reality. Just because you feel something doesn't mean it's true. You feel fear? So what? Fear is nothing but a chemical reaction in your brain, a survival mechanism designed to keep you comfortable. You feel doubt? Who cares? Doubt is just a byproduct of inaction. You feel regret? Then use it as a weapon, not a weight. Every emotion that tries to hold you back is just a test. Life is asking you one simple question. Are you strong enough to ignore this? And if the answer is no, then you will lose. Because the moment you let emotions dictate your actions, you give up control. And the second you lose control, you become just another pawn in the system. Think about it. Every time you hesitate because of fear, you let the world decide your future instead of you. Every time you let doubt stop you, you kill an opportunity that could have changed your life. Every time you dwell on regret, you waste the only thing you truly own, time. And time is the most ruthless currency in existence. You don't get refunds. You don't get extensions. Every second you waste is gone forever. And yet, most men willingly throw their time away because they're too weak to master their emotions. They let fear stop them from taking risks. They let anger turn them into reckless fools. They let sadness paralyze them instead of fueling them. They are slaves to their own minds. But let me tell you something. If you don't control your emotions, someone else will. The world is filled with people who make billions off of weak men who can't control their feelings. Every ad you see, every news story, every social media post, it's all designed to manipulate your emotions. They scare you so you obey. They make you angry, so you react. They make you envious, so you keep buying things you don't need. And if you're not strong enough to see through it, you'll live your entire life being played like a puppet. You will be the man who spends his days scrolling through nonsense, getting triggered over things that don't matter, instead of building a future that does. This is why emotional control isn't just important, it's the foundation of success. The man who controls his emotions controls his actions. And the man who controls his actions controls his future. If you can look at fear and move forward anyway, you become unstoppable. If you can silence doubt and take action despite it, you will win. If you can take regret and turn it into discipline, nothing will ever hold you back. But if you let emotions run your life, then prepare to stay exactly where you are, stuck, miserable, and full of excuses. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you should be a robot. I'm not saying you shouldn't feel anything. I'm saying you should be the master, not the slave. Feel anger, but don't let it make your decisions. Feel fear, but don't let it stop you. Feel sadness, but don't let it break you. Your emotions are nothing more than signals. They are not commands. You have the power to acknowledge them without obeying them. You have the ability to feel something and still do what needs to be done. And that is the difference between men who rule the world and men who are ruled by it. Most people will never understand this. Most people will spend their entire lives chasing happiness, avoiding pain, running from anything that makes them uncomfortable. And that's exactly why they never achieve anything. Because greatness is not built in comfort. Strength is not built in ease. The men who achieve legendary things are the ones who embrace hardship, who face their emotions head on and refuse to be controlled by them. They understand that discipline is greater than motivation, that logic is greater than feelings, that taking action is greater than sitting around overthinking. So next time you feel overwhelmed, next time emotions try to pull you under, remember this. Every second you spend drowning in your feelings is a second you could have spent changing your life. Choose control, choose power, choose action. Because the man who controls his emotions controls his destiny. And the man who controls his destiny, he controls everything. Most men walk around completely unaware that they are prisoners of their own emotion. They get angry and lash out. They feel sad and shut down. They get anxious and hesitate. Their emotions dictate every action, every decision, every single move they make. And that is why they fail. Because the second you let your feelings take control, you are no longer the driver of your own life. You become a passenger, tossed around by whatever emotional wave hits you next. How can you build an empire if your mind is fragile? How can you conquer anything when the slightest discomfort makes you crumble? The truth is, weak men let emotions rule them, while strong men use emotions as fuel. And this is the difference between winners and losers, between those who rise and those who fall. Imagine two men in the same situation. Both lose their jobs. One panics, drowns himself in self-pity, complains about how unfair life is, and wastes months wallowing in his own misery. The other feels the same frustration, but instead of being consumed by it, he channels it into action. He uses that anger as a driving force. He sharpens his mind. He learns new skills. He pushes himself harder than ever before. 6 months later, one man is still crying, still blaming the world, still stuck. The other has built something better, stronger, more resilient than before. This is the power of emotional control. The ability to feel everything but be owned by nothing. Most people believe emotions are something they can't control. They think when anger hits, they have no choice but to explode. When sadness comes, they assume they have to sink into it. But that's a lie. Emotions are nothing but reactions, and reactions can be trained. Do you think the strongest men on the planet allow themselves to be taken down by feelings? Do you think warriors, kings, and conquerors built their legacies by acting on impulse? No. They trained themselves to remain calm under pressure, to think while others panic, to act while others hesitate. And this is exactly what separates men who win from men who lose. Self-discipline. Because a man who has control over his mind has control over his destiny. You will face situations in life that test you. There will be moments when fear will try to paralyze you, when sadness will attempt to break you, when anger will beg you to lose control. And in these moments, the weak will always fold. The weak will always justify their outbursts, their breakdowns, their lack of action by saying, "I couldn't help it." But the truth is, they simply never trained their minds to be stronger than their emotion. And that is why they will always be controlled, always be manipulated, always be at the mercy of how they feel. Because the world doesn't care about your emotions. The world doesn't stop because you're sad. The world doesn't give you a break because you're frustrated. The world keeps moving. And the only question is, are you moving with it? Or are you letting your emotions hold you back? You can train your body to be strong. You can train your endurance, your physical power, your reflexes. But the most powerful training of all is the training of the mind. A man with an unbreakable mind cannot be defeated. He can face loss, failure, betrayal, hardship, and still remain in control. Because no matter what happens, he doesn't react emotionally. He responds with logic, with strategy, with action. And this is why the strongest men in history have always been the most disciplined. Not the most emotional, not the most reactive, but the most controlled. Because control equals power, and power equals freedom. You have two choices in life. You can be the man who is ruled by his emotions, the man who cries about his problems but never fixes them, the man who lets anger destroy his relationships, who lets sadness make him weak, who lets fear keep him from greatness, or you can be the man who acknowledges his emotions but never lets them dictate his action. The man who takes every feeling, pain, anger, frustration, and turns it into a weapon. The man who understands that emotional control is not about feeling nothing, but about choosing strength over weakness every single time. So ask yourself, who do you want to be? The man who is constantly controlled, constantly reacting, constantly stuck, or the man who controls, who moves forward, who builds a future despite whatever emotions try to stop him? Because at the end of the day, your emotions are nothing more than a test. And the only question that matters is, are you strong enough to pass? Think about every successful man in history. Do you think they never felt fear? Do you think they never experienced doubt? Of course they did. The difference is they refused to be controlled by it. They understood that emotions are not reality. They are just noise. And the men who achieve greatness are the ones who learn to silence that noise and stay focused on their mission. They do not let fleeting feelings derail their long-term goals. They do not allow temporary discomfort to make them abandon something permanent. And that is exactly what you need to understand. If you want to be successful, if you want to be powerful, if you want to build a life that others envy, then you must make a decision today. You must decide that no matter what happens, no matter how you feel, you will remain in control. You will not be a slave to anger. You will not be crushed by sadness. You will not let fear stop you, because at the end of the day, emotions mean nothing if they don't serve you. And the only thing that matters is what you do in spite of them. So ask yourself, are you in control, or are you being control? Because that answer determines everything. It determines whether you will be successful or whether you will be forgotten. It determines whether you will conquer life or whether life will conquer you. And if you are tired of being weak, tired of being a victim of your own mind, tired of feeling like you are constantly losing control, then the time to change is now. Master your emotions or be mastered by them. The choice is yours.